Hello, and welcome to I'm Sick, Not Crazy, the podcast that helps you to take control of your own health and healing. My name is Jennifer James, and I'm a licensed and practicing psychotherapist here to talk about becoming your healthiest self, both physically and psychologically. Hello, and welcome to I'm Sick, Not Crazy, the podcast where we help you to learn how to take control of your own healing. Today I'm speaking with Virginia Wilke, who is a craniosacral therapist who I met through a friend and have been seeing once a month for quite a while, and she's pretty amazing. So I thought that I would interview her today and help you all to learn about craniosacral therapy and maybe how you can use it to enhance your own health and healing. Virginia, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Virginia, and I'm the owner of Conscious Soma, which is my craniosacral therapy and somatic bodywork practice. Yeah, I help adults struggling with pain, stress, and trauma reclaim their lives through craniosacral therapy and also body-based trauma techniques.
Nice. Yeah, I've mostly been seeing you for my neck injury, but I do know some people that have been seeing you for trauma and found it very helpful.
Nice. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. No, I was just saying that the craniosacral therapy and the trauma techniques, they often end up being kind of inseparable, but the craniosacral is always the base of what I'm working with. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how craniosacral therapy works, kind of how you use it to heal bodies, what people can expect if they were to see a craniosacral therapist.
Yeah. So let's see. So craniosacral therapy, it's kind of a mouthful right out of the gate. So I'll give you kind of my in a nutshell version, and then I'll try
Perfect.
to a little bit. So maybe I can deepen that. So, craniosacral therapy involves really, really gentle, light touch that allows the body to release restrictions that it's been holding in the tissues and also stimulate and awaken the body's own self-healing mechanism. Yeah. And it can especially be really deeply calming for the central nervous system. So the brain, the spinal cord, it can allow that to really calm and settle, which can rebalance the whole body. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's I should say too that it's a modality, it's a bodywork modality that's done fully clothed and it's light touch. So to receive it, you would lie down on a massage table, or if I'm doing distance remote work, you would get comfortable in your own home. And then it's just involves what I like to tell people from if you were to watch me doing it, it's like watching paint dry.
Yes.
Because from the outside, I'm just holding,
Right.
right? I might just hold your head or I might just hold your tailbone. But from the inside is where all the shifts and the changes are happening.
All the
Yeah.
yummy movement and healing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So to give more of like a context of like, okay, so you're just holding me, what's happening?
Yes.
Um, yeah. So the craniosacral system is starts from the head, the cranium,
Yes.
and goes down the spine to the tailbone, the sacrum.
Mm-hmm.
So hence the name craniosacral therapy, right? So if I'm holding one of these areas, what I'm listening to are these deep, slow movements of fluid, cerebral spinal fluid, through the spinal canal, through the head, right? And at the same time, I'm feeling the tissues moving, and there's this slow rhythmic tidal motion, and all of the tissues kind of float in that.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and the early practitioners of this work, right, because they were first experienced these rhythms in the core, right? So the work came to be known as craniosacral because they were feeling these first in the core of the body. But actually, these rhythms, these are signs of health. This is a natural rhythm that the body experiences, just like the heartbeat, right?
Hmm.
And you can actually feel it anywhere in the body. I could put my hand on a foot and feel this kind of slow fluid expansion and contraction, right?
Okay.
Because we're like 70% fluids. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's like if you were to hold a bag of water, right?
Yes.
And and then our bones and our tissues, they're just like islands floating within all this water, 30%. And they just kind of move
Mm-hmm.
with these fluids and the energies as they move through. So when I'm listening to the body, I'm feeling these healthy rhythms and going, oh, look at that health in the system, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm also feeling areas in the tissues where things don't move as easily. They
Uh-huh.
might feel kind of jammed, or the fluids might have to move around them, or the body might move in a really like unaligned way, kind of like rather than kind of opening, symmetrically, or it might just be really congested or jammed up. So, you know, as I'm noticing that, right, I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with an intelligent organism. So we think of intelligence as our head up, right? But the body has its own wisdom, the body has its own intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I am observing it, it's observing me, and it's noticing, right? That it's noticing these areas I'm seeing, and it's like, yes, this has been stuck for a long time. I'm going to start to adjust that. I'm going to start to bring in more fluids, more energy, more nourishment into this area that's been so congested, and open it up. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. And, one of the things that I've noticed when I'm in a session with you is that you're having this conversation with my body, like you're saying. And it's weird because I can feel my body responding to you. Um, like when you ask my body to take up more space, it's almost like I can feel my insides expanding. So it's really interesting and fascinating to do.
Yeah, and I think sometimes this is one of the most exciting and empowering thing for clients. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I can just think of just last week somebody saying this. It's like, oh my God, there's another consciousness in here. There's another intelligence, and it's listening,
Uh-huh.
and it's actually making adjustments as we talk to it, dialogue or with our hands. And I'm like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So so when you're feeling in the body like those stuck places, is that the same thing that you're feeling when there's trauma, or is that different?
Oh, that's a nice question. Yes, because those stuck places, I mean, when we think of something stuck, a lot of people's minds go to like chiropractic and two
Mm-hmm.
vertebrae, subluxated together. But the body is a physical layer, it's a fluid layer, it's an emotional layer, it's an energetic layer. And
Mm-hmm.
when I'm holding a body, we're holding the whole of that. We're holding the whole of your history, right?
Okay,
This,
yeah.
however you want to term that. So let's say that, 20 years ago you had some huge emotional blow, or maybe as a child, right? Some huge emotional blow. And at the time, your body was too overwhelmed to be able to cope with that, to be able to feel it fully, to be able to process it and discharge it. So, what the body does to protect the organism is it takes all that emotional pain and it will bind it up in a stuck place. Say it sticks it
Mm.
right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that devastation, it contains it, right? So that the
Yeah.
rest of the organ be healthy and move. Yeah, and then 20 years later, when you're stronger and you're more resourced, and we can create the safe conditions, the safe holding environment, the body can say, "Oh yeah, I don't actually need to bind this up anymore. I can slowly, piece by piece, actually unfold this and let this discharge."
Interesting. So it's
Yeah.
almost like what an oyster does with a grain of sand to make a pearl.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Uh-huh. Like there's this irritating thing and it's not working, so it just kind of binds it up and puts it aside. for later, basically. And then what you do is kind of break that up so that it's not stuck in the shell anymore.
Yes. And I would just add that what I do is I create the conditions
Mm-hmm.
that allow break it up, because I really like to emphasize to people that this is their own body making the choices.
Mm-hmm.
Their own body diagnoses it, forms the treatment plan, and makes the change.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the work is how empowering it is,
Mm-hmm.
because your body knows so much better how to heal itself than I ever can, because we are so immensely complex that, I let the inherent wisdom, healing wisdom in your body take over, and it's genius. It's
Nice.
amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Our bodies are amazing. Um, so when you're talking about feeling like the rhythms of the body and the almost like the tidal motion of the fluids, um, you must have really developed a sensitivity to that. How did you do that?
I love that question because it was so hard.
I bet it was.
It wasn't hard. It's not hard for everybody. All of us start in a different place. Some of my classmates, it was like, oh, I feel that right away. And I'd be like, but this is my work and I can't feel a thing.
Uh-huh.
My starting place was I have my own trauma history, right? And a
Okay.
lot of my access to my inner sensations, my inner world was really numbed out and frozen. And so, feeling things in my hands was just, it took forever, honestly. I was just very, very determined, because the first time I sat down in a craniosacral class when I was in massage school, I was like, oh, this is where I belong. This is my work.
Mm-hmm.
But my work wasn't coming that easily to me. So I just practiced. I did hundreds and hundreds of hours on practice clients. Anybody who would let me practice on them, I did. And
Wow.
it comes. The body's like, yeah, we'll get there. It comes, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Yeah, the old story of the osteopaths. This word craniosacral therapy comes from osteopathy.
Mm-hmm.
For people that are not familiar, I don't know if you know, it's DO, or a doctor of osteopathy. That's another path in the United States, North America, and Europe for becoming a medical doctor. They do gentle manual adjustments. So craniosacral therapy comes from that work. So the old story with the osteopaths is they'd get a grain of rice, put it on a table, and then they'd lay a piece of paper over it, right? And then they'd palpate the grain of rice. And then they'd lay another piece of paper and palpate. And then they just keep laying the pieces of paper over and over and seeing how subtly and through how many layers they could palpate.
Wow.
These things we have, things we call hands, are just amazing. We can actually palpate such subtle sensations that we have probably no idea how sensitive these are. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you really did a lot of work to develop that in yourself. And I know from firsthand experience that you are very sensitive. So good work. You got it.
Thank you very much.
um, how did you decide to get involved in craniosacral therapy?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer.
Oh, me
And I
too.
wanted to, oh, and I wanted to be Nancy Drew. but but mostly I really wanted to be a writer, and I did. I pursued that professional path for a long time. And it was wonderful. And um, there was something else calling. Sort of the deeper story behind it was that, ever since a young adult, I've been seeking ways to heal physically and emotionally. I didn't really even understand what my history was. I didn't understand what I was going through, but I was in chronic pain, back pain, neck pain, unstable pelvis, scoliosis issues.
Mm.
And I was also in a lot of emotional pain, a lot of um, real high hypervigilance, stress, anxiety, a lot of really low self-worth.
Okay.
And so I was constantly seeking, I was really attracted to alternative healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to chiropractors and naturopaths and acupuncturists and talk therapists of all flavors and stripes and hypnotherapists, art therapists. I think I went to a craniosacral therapist at one point. I went to medical intuitives, anything, because I knew something wasn't right. And I had inklings, but I was really seeking healing and really not understanding how long it would take.
Yes.
um, and eventually I kind of hit a wall. I got really frustrated. Things weren't changing magically, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, looking back now, I understand that, that 20 years was really important.
Okay.
It really taught me so much about myself. But at a certain point I hit a wall and I said, forget it. I'm going to pursue my professional career. And I got a dream job as a writer, as a health writer, and then an editor.
Oh.
It was a fabulous job, and it was my dream, I thought, and I was so unhappy.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was somehow just I mean, I loved the writing itself, but there was something really unfulfilled. And I remember one camping trip I went on. It was I liked to I still like to solo camp, and I'm sitting in front of a campfire in Northern California, just daydreaming into a fire and thinking about how much I don't want to go back to my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I posed this question to myself, well, like, if you don't want to do your supposed dream job, what is it that you do want to do?
Right.
And I found myself in kind of that dreamy state, daydreaming about individual clients coming into an office with me and telling me about their emotional problems, and me doing some unknown type of energetic healing technique and also talking to them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it really shocked me, honestly.
Okay.
I was like, you want to do that? But it felt really aligned.
Mm-hmm.
It felt really right.
Uh-huh.
So when I came back home, I was like, well, how do I do that? Right. So I started looking around at Reiki, and none of it quite clicked. And then a couple months later, I was again looking for some kind of holistic health practitioner that could help me. And I found this woman, Carol Osborne, here in San Diego, who did this thing called somato-emotional integration. I was like, oh, something that combines the body with emotions. Yes. And as I looked at her, I realized that she had also co-founded a massage school
Oh.
called IPSB, the International Professional School of Bodywork. And I went on there and I started reading about their whole person approach to healing. And I was like, somewhere in the back of my mind, there was just this decision that went, oh, I'm going there.
Yeah.
I wasn't even interested in massage.
Wow.
So I did. I went there, and that's where I found craniosacral therapy. And that started the next 10-year journey.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. It's almost like your higher self told you, okay, this is where you're going.
Yeah, I think actually that's a good way to describe
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And ever since I have been studying craniosacral. I've probably been, I started with massage and then craniosacral at massage school. And then I went on, I did another 4 years of back-to-back craniosacral training. And then in the biodynamic model, which is the model that I work in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also trained in some upledger, and now I'm doing somatic experiencing, which is the trauma-based verbal skills
Uh-huh.
that focus on the body. Yeah, so 10 plus years later, I'm still on the journey.
And I'm sure that's such a rich modality that there's always something new to learn.
Yeah, I think that's part of what I loved about it. It felt like
Mm-hmm.
this bottomless rabbit hole that I
Mm-hmm.
would never get bored with. That was so deep and kept going deeper. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay. What do you think is the best part about this healing modality for you?
Well, I don't think I could pick just one thing because there are so many aspects about it. Is it okay?
That's okay.
All right. Well, the top one that comes to mind is that this modality focuses on the health
Uh-huh.
in the system. There's so much of the healthcare that we receive is focused on the problem,
Yes.
right? Focused on the disease, the dysfunction, what's going wrong, where is it broken, how do we fix what's wrong?
Yes.
That can be very important. And there's a whole context, your whole body, the whole context of what's going right, containing whatever that piece is that's, quote, the problem, right?
Okay.
So this craniosacral therapy, biodynamic craniosacral therapy focuses on the health. It really focuses on what's going right, and what's working. And as we focus on, that sense of vitality in the body, because that's what health is. It's this sense of vitality and the flows, the rhythms. As we come into relationship with those, as I'm holding and I'm like appreciating, wow, look at how beautiful you are. Look at how healthy. It's the body is aware of that. It wakes up and it produces more. It wakes up that vitality and it starts to spread it and it starts to move into areas and go, yeah, I can unlock this. Yeah. So health.
Yeah.
I like how resourcing the work is. Because we're focused on the health, then sessions often really, really kind of slowly build up our inner strengths. And people often come out of a session feeling rested, recharged, more embodied, more centered, right? Because the body is building up its strengths at the same time as it's processing small pieces of whatever it wants to change or shift.
Yes.
So yeah, it's resourcing, it's gentle. I think a lot of sometimes people think that big healing has to be cathartic or painful, and it doesn't. Actually, some of the deepest healing is really sweet, really gentle.
That's lovely. I love that. What you said first about it kind of building on what's working reminds me a lot of something that we talk about in psychotherapy, which is coming from a strengths-based perspective, where you're kind of starting with what is this person doing well in their lives and how can we expand on that. So I think there's a parallel.
Absolutely. And I think that it dovetails so nicely because it's the same whether, you're working with, issues and trauma in psychotherapy or you're working with them through body-based sensations. And it's like we can only process old grief or old pain or old trauma to the extent that there are good stuff, strength, to hold it, to contain it. Yes. So if somebody comes in crisis and they're like, the painful stuff's up here and the good stuff's down here, it's like, no, we have to work to build the good stuff up, right? So that it's safe, so that it's slow, so that it feels good. Yeah. To be able to process that. Yeah.
And so that you can process it without re-traumatizing the person.
Yeah, exactly. Which is critical because it go too fast, go too deep, go too much, and it would re-traumatize. We don't want that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any kind of interesting stories of healing that you've seen in working with people through craniosacral therapy?
Yeah, so many. It's like. It's funny because I never know what's going to happen when I put my hands on the body, because I'm not the one in charge. I'm the one facilitating, and I'm just trusting that the body's going to lead me, right? So sometimes I'm surprised. I never know what's going to happen. I'm thinking of one instance of a man. I think he'd come in for, this was a while ago, I think he'd come in for some kind of trauma, emotional based work, and we'd been working, in the body, and we'd been working on those pieces for a while. And then at a certain point, at the beginning of one of the sessions, he says to me, Virginia, my leg has been kind of numb in a lot of areas, and just achy, painful for, a long time. And I'm like, how long? He's like, oh, a decade or more.
Oh no.
And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that sounds like a pinched nerve for a decade or more. And that sounds really serious to me. And it was so normal to him that he didn't even think to mention it to me. And he was like, do you think craniosacral therapy can help? And I said, probably. Well, let's see. I mean, it can be really helpful for nerve issues. But I told him, when a nerve, when you've got numbness, you've got a compression on the nerve.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's been compressed for long enough, there could be some nerve damage. So I really wasn't sure, how much. I told him, it's a good idea to get the compression off the nerve. I don't know if it's going to help with the numbness issue. It may not. That might be there. So we did one session, just holding his sacrum and allowing whatever was stuck in the lumbar, I believe it was, to decompress. And he came back the next time and he said his numbness and his pain had completely gone away, and they've not returned.
Wow.
Yeah, I was shocked.
One session.
Yeah, so okay, so that's not always the case,
Yes.
but it other cases it'll take months and months and months, and that's the body's process. Sometimes there are a lot of layers, but yeah, it can be surprising, especially in acute cases. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of another person. She had this really, really bad bulging disc right at the base of the spine above the tailbone, and painful place for a bulging disc and common. And it was really, really bad because she relied on exercise and she sat for a living. And those were the things she couldn't do. And she also had a history of depression, so starting to despair. Yeah. This isn't going to get better. She was in that place. And I said, let's see. I said, this work's often super, super helpful for things that have been acute, not long-term. As in it can shift things usually a little faster. So I held, and the first thing the tissue did was just dump so much heat. You've got inflamed tissues around a bulging disc, and they're just, the nerves are aggravated, the tissue is inflamed. So it spent the whole first session dumping heat. It's like being in the middle of a sauna for me.
Wow.
But it's wonderful, right? And she got up, and it was much improved. She was able to walk a little bit after that. We did 2 more sessions, and the body consistently just worked on this really tissue layer, dumping heat. And after that, she slowly eased back into her routine, walking, sitting. And within a couple of weeks, it was back to normal. And when I talked to her, she'd actually forgotten that she'd been depressed, that it was never going to get better.
Oh, my goodness.
So yeah, so that, stories like that are like, yeah, beautiful. Look, and I just held the body and really listened, and look what the body's capable of.
That's got to be so rewarding for you.
Yeah. It's deeply rewarding. Yeah, it's the most, I love writing. I absolutely adore writing, but I have to say that the craniosacral, the body work has just been the most deeply rewarding thing I've ever done.
That's amazing. What you said about holding and listening, it again kind of correlates. It's you witnessing and hearing the body, and what I do is I witness and hear like the spirit and the heart of the person. And just that witnessing and holding space is healing in itself. It sounds like you do that with the body too.
Yeah, there's something so incredibly healing about presence and holding presence with someone. And one of the things that I remember my instructors, sharing with us is that so many of our wounds happened in relationship, right?
Yes.
So much of our healing needs to happen in relationship with a presence that really sees us, really hears us. And when we feel that, right? The heart field, all of us, our consciousness, when we feel someone really deeply there with us, really deep transformation can become possible in those kinds of holding fields.
Yes. I love it. All right. What are some things that you take into consideration when you're approaching a new case with a new patient?
Well, a number of things. I like to take a fairly detailed health history. Not all. I will say that not all craniosacral therapists like to do that. There's different types of work. I personally do. I feel like it's important to me to have some background. It's very helpful. So I take physical and emotional health history. You know, things like concussion, past history, even a long time ago, past concussions, falls, car accidents. They can really have an outsized influence not only on the physical body, but on the emotional, mental, spiritual body. And what can happen too with an old accident is that newer ones can get layered on top and they can kind of build on each other. So that can be super important for me to have a sense of like what's the history here. Are there current health conditions that are current at the moment? And emotional health history, you know, for me, it's really helpful to know, is there a trauma history? You know, was there past abuse? You know, has this person recently lost someone and is deep in grief? You know, where are they? Because when I hold the person, I'm holding the whole of their history.
Yes.
It's like we like to separate out body from mind, from emotion, and send everybody to different practitioners, but the body doesn't see it that way. For the body, it's all one thing. We're one spirit, we're one physicality, we're one emotional, energetic body. So I'm holding all of that so it can be helpful to know if the person is bringing that in with them to the table. And then next, I guess it's really helpful for me to know a person's level of resource, like how much internal and external resource does this person have? By which I mean, internal, it's like how strong is the vitality in the system? How much health is currently here? You know, is there enough sleep? How's the nourishment? You know, how is the internal resources? And then the external is like, you know, how much of a circle of support does this person have, especially if they're coming in, you know, and it's funny because somebody might be coming in for something they think is strictly a physical issue, and then we find out that there's some other emotional root to it or some other, you know, underlying psyche emotional root. So it's really helpful to know for everyone, like what kind of support do they have? You know, is there family connections that are supportive? Is there a spouse that's supportive? Do they see a psychotherapist, especially if they're coming in for deep trauma work? Is there someone else in that field that can help hold the container of the work we're doing?
Yes.
Is their best friend the dog available? You know, these things. Let me think. There's a bunch of factors. History of touch. You know, did somebody have positive touch growing up? Did they have negative touch? Did they not get touched much? Because, you know, if someone has a negative history of touch or they haven't been touched much, that's going to be really important to know when me, the stranger, goes, "Hi, would it be okay if I touch you now?"
Right.
And also, I would say their interoception. Interoception is the ability to feel the inside of your body. So how accessible are your internal sensations to you? Can you feel your heartbeat? Can you even sense your own breathing? How easy is it to feel the aliveness in your limbs? Like if you close your eyes, is there a sense of vitality and aliveness? Some people can access this really easily. And for other people, you know, things have cut it off.
Right.
Trauma, numbing can cut it off. Or you know, we've been living in our head up.
Right.
It's a busy world. We've lost touch with the body. So if there's not a lot of that connection into the internal body, then we'll really work with starting to grow that capacity if they're interested and willing. because, our whole life, everything that happens to us takes place through the filter through this body.
Yes.
And every ounce of healing happens in the here and now through the body.
Mm-hmm.
Even in your work, right?
Absolutely.
You're working, yeah, you're still working with a body
Mm-hmm.
in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly. So and then superseding all of it is what the body shows me.
Okay.
Yeah. What the beyond all that, I take those things I all hold in my head, but then it's just what is the body showing me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's this kind of multi-layered, approach as far as making sure that they have the support that they need, making sure that they have the coping skills that they need internally, making sure that you tune in to what the body gives to you in the moment. Um, really interesting.
Oh, and I forgot, it's really also it's about their expectations
Okay.
and their readiness for the work. It's like why are they coming to me? What is it that they want?
Mm-hmm.
And how ready and committed are they to that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, all of that informs it for sure.
Do you find that with some people you spend a lot of time helping them to build that resourcing before you can do any deeper work?
Yeah. Yeah, it's in a number of cases, people have gone through extensive accident history, for example, car accident after car accident, and they've gotten layered on top of each other. And maybe they've shaken up the body more and more each time to the point where it's like,
Yeah.
right, as an example. So, really, for a long time, we have to work on stabilization, right? Stabilize. We have to work on allowing the central nervous system to start to remember what settling feels like because it's been locked in
Yeah.
right, fight or flight for so long. So until it can start to remember, oh yeah, this is what settling, this is what rest and digest feels like, um, then then any then any work we do would just stir the pot more. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of stabilization.
Okay. Rest and digest. I like
Yeah.
that. How do you see craniosacral therapy fitting into a well rounded healthcare regimen and with Western medicine?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, I really I want to empower my clients beyond anything. I want to really work with my clients and get them to trust their instincts, right? I think that Western medicine has a role. It's very good at diagnostics, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that can be really empowering to have a sort of a physical diagnostic understanding from that perspective of, okay, here's what might be going on for me.
Yes.
Um, so I think that can be very helpful. And obviously, if somebody comes to me with a broken bone, I'm sending them straight to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, so I think that ideally there's a bit of a balance between the two. And in terms of working craniosacral therapy's place in working with other modalities, um, it is really complementary to most any type of a modality that's seeking to build the internal resources and wake up the body's own self-healing mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Craniosacral therapy, that's its role as well. So it's going to be very supportive. So things like acupuncture can be lovely. Sometimes an important element is like nourishing the body. So naturopaths or people that are working with the body's nutrition, sometimes that can be a missing element.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't have all the answers. I absolutely don't have all the answers. There are a lot of realms of health that I have little information on. So I really rely on, the alternative practitioners that clients have found that are deeply supportive. to provide those pieces
Yes.
and coordinate with the care that I'm doing.
Okay. So I'm kind of hearing that you're seeing Western medicine's role with what you do mostly as kind of a diagnostic, and then other types of alternative medicine being more complementary to what you do.
Let me think. I think I have to struggle with my own biases because I've struggled with Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there can be some really important care received that way. And I try to leave that decision to my client, but I also try to say, look, there's also a lot of not taken into account with Western treatment approaches.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being the wholeness,
Yes.
right? And so it's like, you go to your doctor because your elbow hurts and your doctor is going to treat your elbow, but your body doesn't know that this is an elbow that's disconnected from the whole. The body only knows the whole. So if you're working with someone that's not working with the whole of you, um, things can get a little fragmented. So and also I think that the focus on the body's own healing mechanisms is left out of Western medicine
Mm-hmm.
to a great degree,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And really, that's where the real healing is. Even a Western medical doctor, I think, if he or she is being honest, isn't saying I'm healing this person. They're just giving therapeutics to support conditions that allow the body's own healing mechanisms to arise
Yes.
to heal.
Yes.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
I
I
think
think
it.
it's a struggle.
I think it
I'm
does.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
struggle point. Yeah.
I get that, and I think that one of the things that I also struggle with Western medicine is this idea that the healing is coming from outside of the person versus coming from the inside of the person, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, actually that's one of the things that I love about the work is it is an
Mm-hmm.
inside out
Mm-hmm.
healing as opposed to, as you're saying, that outside in approach. It can be kind of scattershot and it may or may not be what the body needs.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest realizations that I had with my own healing journey was that um, I should not be relying on somebody else to give me the answer, and that I needed to find the answer within myself for how I was going to get well. And I think
Mm.
that fits in with what you're saying really well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that kind of sense of empowerment
Mm-hmm.
with realizing, oh, I'm going to take command of my own healing.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nice.
Okay. Um, how do you continue to learn in order to keep on top of the latest with craniosacral therapy?
Well, a couple things. I mean, I don't know if addicted to learning is right, but it might be. I take a lot of classes. I mean, since I started in bodywork school, I have been in continuous classes, almost continuous classes for like the last 10 years. So there are more classes lined up in my queue of things I want to take than money or time or money in the bank. That being said, honestly, the biggest teacher is the body. So, you can learn so much from instruction from another person, but ultimately the real teacher is the body that you're holding, right? And, it's like, oh, this is what happens when I XYZ or when I'm not neutral enough. Oh, okay, there, and I'm going to shift back more into my neutral. And oh my God, look how that opens up. Okay, aha, learning moment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like the longer I work with bodies, the more they start to show me.
Yes.
It's like this ever that rabbit hole I talked about. It's just a deepening. So my learning process too is about how do I come more into presence with myself? Really,
Mm.
how do I start to come into a listening stillness, right? Because that's the place where some of that deeper learning and deeper shift can happen. So a lot of it is also having to start to learn to sit with myself in deeper
Mm.
ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
That segues beautifully into the next question. What type of self care do you do in order to keep yourself emotionally and physically able to do your best work?
Well, let's see. I have to move.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I do a lot of walking. And recently, my favorite form of movement has been I have to, let me clarify, I have to move because I sit a lot
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, in this work. So recently, my favorite form of movement has been this kind of, I, I don't know if you've heard of authentic movement.
Mm.
Um, it involves letting this creature within, this intelligence that we've been talking about, it involves letting it start to move the body, right?
Mm.
So we're used to deciding, I'm going to lift my hand, I'm going to turn it over. Well, there's another intelligence in there that can move the body as well.
Mm-hmm.
and and I, been playing with this ever since massage school. So, if you suddenly find yourself going like this and you hadn't thought to do that, before the thought, the body does that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of intelligence, that's the kind of motion. So lately I've been playing with just standing on my yoga mat and asking the body, okay, how do you need to move today? And
Mm.
I have myself in the most interesting yoga like sessions. It's been very enjoyable. um, I receive a lot of session work myself.
Okay.
um, I receive at least one craniosacral therapy session a month, and I do two therapy sessions with a somatic bodywork oriented trauma therapist a month.
Mm-hmm.
I also do other body. I also receive other body work. That's really supportive for me.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and a lot of practice, daily practice with sitting in stillness, with meditating, or during this pandemic with attempting to meditate and
Yes.
watching how busy and chaotic my mind is and how
Mm-hmm.
much my body is buzzing and then being like, oh, look at that. Okay.
Uh-huh. And just
Yeah.
accepting whatever's happening within yourself.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Just really, a lot of my self-care comes down to learning how to be with that trauma history, which is a very high activation state in me. It's like global high
Mm.
intensity. And then learning how to sort of find what helps that nervous system start to start to drop.
Mm.
So, sometimes I'm like watching nature videos with the sound off or thunderstorms. I don't know
Mm.
why. Something about rain and thunderstorms when I was a kid was deeply soothing.
It's
So
wonderful.
I play. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. Just really feeling what helps you to settle and be more present. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like even as you're saying that, I feel my feet settling even more on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just that back and forth and acknowledging that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If people want more information about craniosacral therapy, what types of resources would you suggest?
Yeah. So I would, it, for biodynamic craniosacral therapy, I would actually check some of the work by the founder. His name is Franklin Sills,
Mm.
which is Sills. And he's written a lot of books on the subject. I wouldn't recommend them for a beginner because they're a lot to digest. But his website, he's based in the UK. His website has some lovely info. It's let's see, I think I wrote it down. Oh no, I didn't. It's craniosacral-biodynamics.org. That's a nice place to start to get a feel for the work. There's also my association that I'm registered through here in the U.S. It's the Biodynamic Craniosacral Therapist Association of North America. There's so many mouths. And that is craniosacraltherapy.org.
Okay.
And then I'll give one more. There's a digestible book written by Roger Gilchrist, and it's called Craniosacral Therapy and the Energetic Body. We used to use it with beginning students when I was teaching this work, because of all the massive tomes written on this very abstract work, it's the most concrete and digestible. So it's just a little book.
Okay. So, yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in treatment?
Yeah, so my business name again is Conscious Soma. You can find me online at conscioussoma.com, which, as I'm spelling it out, I'm realizing it's hard to spell. So you can type in virginiawilke.com, which is WILKE.com. It will take you to the same website.
Perfect.
People are welcome to call or email me for more information. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. I really appreciate your time. And I feel like next time I come to see you, I will have such a better understanding of what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's I'm Sick, Not Crazy podcast with myself, Jennifer James, MFT. Please remember that this podcast is educational in nature and that it's not intended to substitute for medical or psychological advice. To learn more about my work, to share podcast topic ideas, or to book me for speaking engagements or interviews, please visit my website at jenniferjames-author.com and choose the contact link. If you would like to support my work financially, you can find me at patreon.com/JenniferJamesMFT. Thank you, and remember that you can take control of your own health.